just a huge gap in terms of technology, or in particular AI acceptance in the eastern part of the world and western part of the world. For example, India and China, 88% of people surveyed are positive or are open to AI and technology, right? Well, you look at countries like France, like the UK, and many European countries, it was in the 50s, and worldwide the average is close to 70.
There's a sense of inevitability despite the resistance. Why do you feel there's a different level of acceptance?
Cultural and philosophical differences. In many eastern side of the world, especially East Asian countries, Singapore, China, for example, South Korea, and maybe India as well, right? They tend to prioritize this collective benefit over individual privacy concerns when it comes to AI and other advanced technology, if it makes sense. Also, there's this trust in the government and trust in institutions. Eastern society, I feel, often demonstrate higher trust in government and in companies and in institutions to manage technology and other things responsibly. In China, a lot of elderlies, they are cared by their children and relatives. It's very common for the children, grandchildren, or relatives to be able to access information that here in the Western world we consider is really, really private information. Tencent built everything in this platform, so you can integrate with have the daughter, the son, the grandchildren to be integrated into this platform, so they can have direct contact with the doctors, with the care facilities, with whoever that's needed.
Baseline.
The baseline is designed to create an emotional response.
I've seen things you won't believe.
More human than human. Make you question everything.
As this is our second remote baseline, it's so nice to welcome you on. I think the last one was on the West Coast. You're in Canada. Maybe just give us a little intro into kind of who you are and your perception of AI and kind of the journey here.
Sure. Hey, Ian, thanks for having me here. I am running an AI consulting firm. It's called ApogemAI. So we do AI and other technology advisory. We do consulting work, and we also do education and enablement in general. So prior to my current role as the CEO of ApogemAI, I was running the IBM APAC business, so working with 15 country regions in the Asia Pacific. Tech has been my life. So this is the only thing I've been doing since probably university time. I grew up in China, and since a young age, I've always been very curious about new things, how things work. Growing up, in my household, if anything ever broken, everybody looking at me. So I was that kind of child. And getting into technology and computers was sort of by accident, not by design. So it happens a long time ago when I was in high school. One summer, it's really, my parents came to me, it's like, what's your plan for the summer? I was like, I got no plans, just hanging out with friends. And they were like, maybe you go hang out with your cousin. He just got a job and he's got a computer in his office. Maybe you can go and ask him to show you how it works. So I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll go. So that's how it got started. And, back in those times, if you remember, computer were like this huge boxy kind of thing. Is black screen with MS-DOS operating system and all command line, you type it in, and but it's really interesting to a teenager. I don't know about any other teenager, but it was interesting to me. And this thing, you actually type in something, it actually did something behind the scene, it actually responded to you. So I got hooked, and that's how it got started.
About in China were you kind of brought up? I'm interested to understand a little bit more because, uh, as we've seen the emergence of the recent AI and DeepSeek and the amazing innovation coming out of China, which I am hugely impressed by, uh, China can seem a little bit of a mystery, certainly to people in the UK. Whereas when I hear the stories behind the entrepreneurs, I think it's the Zhejiang University, they're just normal people, exactly the same entrepreneurial spirit, the same challenges, the same social challenges. They're just entrepreneurs wanting to build innovative things. And whilst differences seem to be obvious, we're actually the same. Certainly, our passion for technology and moving humanity forward. I don't know what, a little bit more about your history or where you were and how you feel about that would be really interesting, I think.
I grew up in northern China, which was like an hour north of Beijing, the capital. Is the biggest city in northern China. So, I mean, back when I was, growing up, um, technology was a big thing. So I guess especially parents in the cities, they all wanted their children to study either math or computers or physics. Business came at a later time. In the early 90s or late 80s, technology was really a big thing in education. So that's how I got started. I lived in North America, in my adulthood. So I can really see both side of the world, how it works. In China, especially after 90s, after the economy opened up, um, almost everybody, especially young people, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. I guess Chinese people are really business people. It seemed to be in the culture, and it seemed to be the tradition, and and it's really attractive, especially for the young population. Instead of going through the traditional route, like in agriculture or in manufacturing. I think a lot of people aspire to be scientists, to really using technology to do something big. Of course, making money is one thing, but is really making something work. I think drives a lot of people. It may be in the culture. It may be because parents care about education, so that's how children were raised, basically. And yeah, a lot of young people want to be in business, that's for sure.
Inspiration to build and specifically build with technology. Like, where does that come from? Is that from science? Is there? I mean, I've started reading some recent science fiction written out of China. Again, a lot of the structure of the story resonates with Western science fiction. Obviously, there's the other influences from Asia. What captures the spirit of young people in China to try and be entrepreneurs? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's in the culture. Throughout the history, Chinese people have always been the business people, I call it, right? So doing business was just tradition, especially in the southern part of China to start with, back, probably a couple thousand years ago, right? And now is everywhere, especially with technology. People see opportunities. And in general, people aspire to improve the quality of life, right? And technology is such a big thing right now. And I can show you a recent survey done by Ernst Young, right? Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, they released this AI sentiment survey, right? There's a huge this divide, not just China, right? There's just huge gap In terms of technology, or in particular AI acceptance, in the eastern part of the world and western part of the world, right? For example, India and China, 88% of people surveyed are positive or are open to AI and technology, right? Well, you look at countries like France, like the UK, and many European countries, it was in the 50s. And worldwide, the average is close to 70, right? So you can see, for many reasons, right, there is this, level of acceptance when it comes to AI and other technology. In China, there's no difference. In general, people feel very positive and feel great opportunity that probably people have never seen before.
Why do you think there's that difference? I mean, I certainly feel resistance here. And a lot of that comes from the perception of maybe it impacting existing industries. So if you think about the creative industry, writing books, creating content, marketing, data roles, there's that sense of resisting handing over to technology. But I think, Vicky, the challenge is the technology is doing it so much cheaper and quicker. There's an inevitability about it that certainly there's a sense of inevitability despite the resistance. I don't know, how do you feel? Why do you feel there's a different level of acceptance?
I think for a few reasons. Cultural and philosophical differences is probably a major one, right? Especially East Asian countries, Singapore, China, for example, South Korea, and maybe India as well, right? They tend to prioritize this collective benefit over individual privacy concerns when it comes to AI and other advanced technology, if it makes sense, right? Eastern society, I feel often they demonstrate higher trust in government and in companies and in institutions to manage, technology and other things responsibly. General consensus is, if this is what the country decide to do, a lot of people have a certain trust in that decision. And also different risk calculations, as you mentioned, Ian. I think in a lot of Western countries, typically they emphasize potential risks such as privacy, security, and things like that. While the Eastern approach may focus more on practical, especially immediate practical benefits and competitive advantage. And also there's a historical context as well, I think. In terms of technology adoption patterns, I think East Asia countries, historically, these countries are used to using technology adoption to drive national development. I think that's one of the major reasons as well. And most importantly, so many Asian countries recently, they experienced this technological leapfrogging in mobile technology and digital payments, to make the populations more accustomed to this rapid technology change. For example, when I went back to China, I was super shocked that almost nobody were willing to accept cash anymore. So everything is on a cell phone. You don't even need credit card, don't need a wallet. As long as you have your phone, is touch payment. That was many, many years ago, right? And you almost it's good or bad, right? I couldn't hire a taxi on the street because I didn't have the mobile payment, right? So that's one example, like how difference, even back then, that's probably 10 years ago. The difference you feel is even more significant. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think there are many reasons to cause this.
I think there's a couple of points that are immediately I'm considering. Firstly, is I want to go back to this point about. I mean, my personal belief, and I've speak to a lot of people about this, is that AI has to raise the population. It has to raise the people. It's so the potential of it's so big. It's internet scale promise. So it can't be seen as a handful of private companies who are going to benefit. I mean, I do believe public sector, i.e., governments, need to have some form of deployment for the good of the population and for the good of integration of countries as well, I think, because as AI heightens the digital ability of a country, well, other countries need to have a level of equivalence. So we're going to have a modern day dark age. You know, as certain countries embrace digital and cognitive and move into this AI era, if others aren't there, how are they possibly going to even interact? So, I believe that there has to be societal enablement through AI. So that's aligned. I mean, when I look, I've started to see recently some of the built world development in China in cities like, is it Chongqing? I mean, they're amazing, Vicky. I've seen this BYD supercar that can jump over holes. Like sitting here in the UK, there's certain things that I look at in Asia, in Singapore and China, that I even question whether it's real because it seems so far ahead. And I don't understand how that's happened so quickly in some ways. The rate of progress seems quite, I mean, it's impressive.
I agree with you. I myself, I'm a huge believer of how do you call it? I guess democratizing AI or other advanced technology, right? I totally believe, this is something that will really impact us, the humanity, every country in very different ways, right? I think the technology should belong to the mankind, not just in the hands of the rich, the famous, or the rich countries.
Democratization threatens the people who capture value out of things. If you like, I used AI to design a new font for Baseline, and I was thinking about 3 years ago, if I'd have wanted to design a new font, that would have been £5,000, a digital design agency, a month of work. That is an industry of human capability. Now I can use a generative AI to generate a font in 24 hours. Now, that's allowed me, the democratization of that process allowed me to move quickly, do something creative. I think it's amazing. I've done it at a very low cost point, but you can see the power dynamic is changing.
Many Eastern countries, like in China, you mentioned Singapore. I lived there for almost 3 years, and things are happening really, really, really fast, right? For one thing, I was mentioned earlier because the technology leapfrogging, right? That sort of got them started a lot faster because they didn't need to deal with the older infrastructure and start building digital infrastructure right away, right? That's one of the reasons. Especially China, Singapore and other countries, they have already developed this very comprehensive digital infrastructure that are specifically designed and built to facilitate this AI integration. You mentioned the cars and building flying cars, and it's a real thing now, right? If we talk about the road, so the autonomous driving, right? In China, the design philosophy is very different than perhaps what Tesla is doing, right? So the infrastructure is integrated in the on the road, is in the highways. So the cameras and sensors, and they're not in the cars themselves. So a lot of highways, and they have already this capability to talk to cars, interactive with the smart cars with AI integration, right? So the approaches are different, rightfully or wrongly, but they took direction for easy integration, not just with one particular company and one particular technology, but overall the general AI technology, just using the highways, the road, and autonomous cars as example. And also the data availability is another thing, right? So there are different approaches, to collect data, to share data, and to deal with privacy, to create this various foundations for AI development, and based on different culture, based on different tradition. I think I mentioned to you, Ian, we started working with a Chinese agency to work on elder care, medical care, social care, managing long-term sort of illness, if you will.
I wanted to come to this because when you talked about this, it was utopian. I worry that when technology comes along, Vicky, that the edges of society miss out. So elderly people being one of them, that sometimes accessibility to technology, loneliness, these sort of things can be extremely detrimental. So when I hear or see government level programs that are deploying technology to support people on the edges of society, whether it be age or any other reason, I think it's absolutely fascinating, utopian. So I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I kind of wanted to give context to what you're saying, because it sounds like a huge leap forward in the dignity and respect for people.
So this project, we are partnering with the Tencent. They developed this WeChat. It's like is a humongous company. They're in everywhere, technology-wise. And also the Chinese agency, they work with elderlies, basically. In China, the background is the population is aging. So people over 60 years old, there are over 200 million people over 60 years old in China. That's 6-7 times of the entire Canadian population. I don't know about UK, it's probably 4 times of the entire UK population, right? It's a big number, 260 million. And this is the most vulnerable group, right? So this project is really near and dear to my heart. When you work with elderly, especially, someone who, have hard time taking care of themselves, right? Really, in the advanced aging stage. And they're really one of the most vulnerable group of people. And I'm really happy that the government and various agencies and also these huge technology companies like Tencent, they're probably like the Facebook, the Instagram, and all other social media company combined, right? Is humongous. They're taking these steps to help this group of vulnerable people, right? It's really great to see. What Tencent have done already is they built this platform specifically for elder care. So in here, they have the infrastructure already for companies like ApogemAI to integrate with various hospitals, various caring facilities or long-term care facilities, or community centers, and for older people, right? To integrate with this platform to for seniors and their helpers to use the technology to manage their life, including, for example, fraud is a big thing. Fraudsters, they target older people to, of course, get their bank account or whatever, send money, and in general, just bad people trying to do bad things, right? So fraud detection is built into this platform to prevent or make it harder for them to target seniors. And I mentioned the culture difference, right? In China, a lot of elderlies, they are taken care of by their children and relatives. And it's very common for the children, grandchildren, or relatives to be able to access information that here in the Western world we consider is really, really private information, like your bank information, like your medical records and other, other your social kind of settings, right? But in the eastern part of the world, especially in China, it's very, very common for children to get the doctor's calls. When something happens, the helper will directly contact the children instead of the senior. And, for payment as well, right? The children take care of their parents and have access to that. It's very, very common. Maybe, it's definitely in the culture. So anyways, so Tencent built everything in this platform, right? So you can integrate with have the daughter, the son, the grandchildren to be integrated into this platform, so they can have direct contact with the doctors for hospital. So the doctor-patient, in general, the doctor-patient ratio in China is pretty good, but in cities like big cities like in Shanghai, in Beijing, right, and also rural communities, I guess resources are scarce. So the ratio is in large cities and surrounding rural areas is probably one doctor per 1,000 seniors. And also some seniors, they have a hard time getting to the hospital. So what we have been doing with the agency and with technology companies, and we work with hospitals and care facilities to integrate all these into this one platform within WeChat. And so elders don't have to go out. They can remotely register for hospital care. So if tomorrow they want to go, they can book online today and to go to the care facility, whether it's hospital or some other specialized doctors, and they can get remote access to doctors if they really cannot leave their bed. Remote diagnostic as well, and also the next step is to integrate with IoT devices like blood pressure machines or the diabetes machines, and to upload their blood sugar levels every day to this platform, so they can get automatic monitoring of their condition. And if anything out of the ordinary happens, their relatives or registered caretakers will get notification and something can happen. So a lot of things are being done, and the amount of response we get from the senior community, the community means so their family members, the caretakers, doctors and nurses are overwhelmingly positive, because this is something that this community really needed, and the technology is really making it happen. So things like that happens a lot, and not just in healthcare and in all industries. And that's something that, I believe in the technology, and I feel very positive about technology, perhaps because we are involved in these kind of things on day in, day out basis. And you really see how it impacting people's lives.
Maybe this is a cultural difference that it would be nice to explore just for a few minutes, is to a certain extent, to be connected to that larger system, you're giving up a level of privacy. But it sounds like in these areas, families are sharing this information anyways. Like maybe here, there's a less sense of comfort with that level of transparency. I would say people maybe try and resist that level for whatever reason. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole list of reasons about why privacy is important, because they don't want to lose value. That maybe they don't want people to see. There's a certain I will retain it, but it feels as though to access a broader level of services that are driven by data and AI, you're giving up a level of privacy and control for transparency. And that idea traverses from healthcare across many different areas. Even, this idea of buying a car, that there's a movement that people want cars without microchips. They don't want to be tracked. They don't want people know where they are. They want to be independent. You see that's quite a strong narrative here. There's a sense that these big companies are out to, monitor and surveillance, which tend to be associated with dystopian science fiction. Why do you think it's more acceptable in China or these areas that you're deploying this type of technology?
I definitely hear you, Ian. As I mentioned, I grew up in China, but I spent all my adult life in North America, basically. So I understand, the cultural differences, and that's why I've always been a huge advocate in terms of, you know, you cannot treat technology and its applications in its pure form. Let me explain, right? So technology has to, whatever you do with technology, you have to consider the cultural differences, right? In this specific use case, I think let's just say in China, but it's common in a lot of Eastern countries. So in this particular case, I think, just harmonizing technology with this Confucian values, right, is this Chinese philosophy, respect for elders and family duty, and this collective welfare.
Use moral values around family and looking after each other.
Exactly, right? So in this particular case, it's really not just to improve life because there's better care, the quality. Exactly. So the culture aspect is definitely in there, and I guess I can sort of understand. In the Western society, it's hard to understand why wouldn't the doctor call me first, and but call my daughter or my son first, right? But it's the tradition, is what is expected of the children to do for the elders, and especially as parents get older and taking care of their welfare and their health and their general welfare, I guess, right? It is just in the culture, is accepted by the society, it's expected by everybody, whether it's parents and children. Everybody is on the same page. This is how it goes.
I'll be making sure my children are aware of this responsibility, Vicky. I'll be making sure it's very clearly laid out to them.
But that being said, right, they can choose the seniors if their mind is working, their physical condition allows them to make the choice, and they can choose for the doctors to call them directly or contact them instead of their children, right? But a lot of times, when the mind is gone, when the physical condition is not there to take care of themselves, and children automatically, just took over the responsibility. Is just the Confucian values. Is just throughout the history. This is how people live generation after generations, and expected of the children to take care of their family, their grandparents, their parents.
I mean, the AI technology that you're seeing, this that somehow captures the morals and values of society and delivers it. That goes beyond healthcare, doesn't it? It goes into infrastructure, working environments. Where else are you seeing this emerge in a really, apparent way?
Apparent way.
Yeah, where else is this kind of happening? Are you seeing finance, in education being one of these, Vicky, that over here AI is disrupting education hugely? I think one of the reasons is that young people are leveraging AI tools really well to respond, to operate within the educational environment, because they seem to be more open to leveraging generative AI and using these tools. So they're in this educational system where they're being taught by teachers who probably have less a grip or understanding how to prompt generative AI and use it. So, we're seeing education being, I believe, quite disruptive, not from the consumer being the person receiving the education. So consumers may be the wrong word, but that consumer level disruption in creative and education, I think, is huge here. And it's, as it emerges, people are going to realize, wow, just how disruptive this is.
Absolutely. AI is impacting the education sector in a big way, right? Surprisingly, initially, I think a lot of people are against it. All right. So, especially children in school or even university students, you're not supposed to use AI, right? Otherwise, how do you learn, right? This is how we always learn. You have to learn the hard way, right? But surprisingly, lately, I have been talking to professors from Wharton Business School, Columbia Business School, and the I think the sentiment has changed. Even in these elite, Ivy League schools, their students are armed with AI these days. It's totally acceptable for students to use AI to do their research, to even generate the basic, papers or whatever, right? But then you cannot purely 100% rely on AI to do your work. What the schools are doing these days, and they take the tedious work out of the equation, basically. So AI is doing the groundwork, but the students are supposed to do better in a way, right? So now AI is doing the work that you used to be doing. So you spend your time focusing on higher value add activities. So they are basically training students to think strategically, to develop leadership capabilities, to focus on creativity, because now the time is freed up, right? So students have more time to really doing things that only human can do at the moment. So I think this is a big change. I feel in the past year and a half, the sentiment has really changed, starting from the top elite schools in North America. And in China is generally acceptable to use AI, also to do the basic research, this kind of thing, but also customization is a big thing, right? So when I say customization, I mean the AI tutors, right? Something specifically designed and customized for this particular individual, whether it's a small kid or is university student or adult can be, right? Personalized learning is really popular. A lot of startups are focusing on personalized learning. Even my 12-year-old, at home, he was learning different languages, Japanese, Korean, Russian, and Spanish, whatever he's interested in, right? So he's learning using this app. It's called the Duolingo, right? I'm not affiliated with any of those companies, but I just found it interesting, and in there, it's designed as a game, right? It depends on your interest. So the app will actually give you something that specifically will have will interest you, right? So my son was like addicted to this app. Every day he'll be like, oh, I have to complete this, I have to complete this. As a result of it, he spent more time learning languages just because of the personalized learning built into this app, right?
My experience of being a ChatGPT, DeepSeek, generative AI user is that for me, I find AI rewards curiosity quickly. We're in this kind of social media or attention media, dopamine society where, media is optimized for attention and retention. Education, it must be really hard for someone who's coming off a swipe TikTok app or something equivalent to then focus on a 50-page book to read. Whereas if, for me, Gen AI tooling, if I think, oh, I want to know more about, I think you mentioned blood testing or something like that, I can access that information so quickly and I can get that fulfillment cycle on learning really quickly. And for me, I've found that how do you, certainly with my kids, and how do you trigger interest and curiosity? Because to your point, curiosity is rewarded quite quickly because you can be on Duolingo or a Gen AI and you can learn very quickly. Russian language, for example, could be accessible very quickly. I guess that I suppose the question I have there is, where's the longer-term reward? If information can be, I guess we went from having to speak to people to learn things, which may have involved going somewhere and get set in the right context, to just Google it, just search for it. And now we're in instantaneous conversational AI that rewards curiosity instantly. Like, what? How do we ensure that ourselves, our children, everybody has an eye on the longer term as well, as opposed to this instant gratifying curiosity? Do you see how like if we're using Gen AI to accelerate the reward of curiosity, how do we ensure people keep an eye on 5 year, 10 year, 20 years?
I guess curiosity is this thing, right? So just looking at my kids, right? So it's not like I'm curious about this one thing, I find answers and I'm done with it, right? So you satisfy the curiosity even immediately, and right away there's something else pops up and they keep doing it, right? So what I see in AI, not just for kids, this technology, for everybody, adults, students, whoever, right? So it really, give people like the specialized knowledge is used to be super, super hard to get, right? Google did some of that, and then the AI just leapfrogging to a whole new different level, right? You can be semi-legal expert, medical expert. You can do the basic things before you go see a doctor, for example, right? So that itself is really interesting. And in terms of curiosity, right? I see, just give you example the other day, right? So the market up and down, and we talk about at home, this and that, the stocks, the market, the policy shifting, right? Just me and my husband were chatting, and the kids, they perked up their ears and they're listening, right? And the other day, my son just quietly spent the night in investigating how stock market works. And he came back to me and saying, Warren Buffett, he bought his first stock at 11. I'm already 12. I want an account. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I already downloaded this stock simulator, and I'm into NVIDIA, and my stock has gone up, overnight, blah, blah, blah. Before, they didn't have this opportunity to right away become a market expert or stock trading expert overnight, at least have the basic knowledge, right? But now with AI, they can access the simulator right away, right? They can spend a few hours with ChatGPT or other, large language models and get a basic information. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm very positive. Even look at the next generation, right? They are really using it to improve themselves, to learn something really quickly, and that curiosity is still there.
It's amazing. Can I tell you, Vic, your family values, your hopefulness and positivity, it really resonates with me. It's easy to think there are chasms between people around the world, but the reality is, we're speaking several thousand miles away, and the things that you're saying resonate deeply with me, and that hopefulness and positivity is inspirational. I want to go to your journey because I'm really enjoying this. Your journey from entrepreneurship to IBM. How did you find that leap to a large corporate and then back to the entrepreneurial journey? It sounds like you've experienced a wide diversity of business. How did you find that, and what are you kind of enjoying now?
Sure, sure. Well, I guess, I'll go back to the beginning, right? So, since the first time I touched the computer, this thing, I mean, it's been magical to me. And so naturally, I picked computer science in university, and later I got a master's in computer science. But the real turning point for me, however, was when I joined IBM. That's almost 20 years ago. So I was hired as a consultant, working with the customers, help them sort through all kinds of, data, scenarios, processing this huge amount of data and try to make sense of the data and to make better business decisions, right? So that was my job I was hired for. Then throughout this journey, that's when I realized technology is not just coding, it's not just gadgets, it's not just the tools, right? It is something that can really change lives of people and businesses on a massive, massive scale, right? So that consulting job, I was 100% on the road as a consultant. That job took me all over North America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, working with the largest companies in the world. For example, the biggest insurance company in Zurich, working with the Amsterdam, the government, and in London, Barclays Bank in London, the office in Canary Wharf.
The Canary Wharf is Vicky. Canary Wharf's very different now. A lot of those banks are not there anymore, but it's very interesting to see it now.
Okay, I remember the Barclays Bank project very, very vividly. You won't be able to guess why. It's not because their office building is so impressive, overlooking the entire London, but because of their cafeteria. I remember the cafeteria. They serve the best Indian food. And I remember to this day. Anyways, um, that's when my love for data and AI and this domain started during my consulting days, and I really enjoyed being this bridge between pure tech and business. It all started during that time. And, and even to this day, right, it lasted throughout my career. And later, of course, running the IBM APAC business, it was wild. I got to, work on really huge projects that impacted business society in a very big way. Working on with the Australian government on sustainability, reducing carbon footprint, working on cybersecurity in Singapore and Vietnam, and working with the Chinese agencies to trace their pork supply chain. That was interesting too. So China consumes over 60 million tons of pork per year. That's over half, over 50% of the entire world's consumption of pork, right? But as you probably know, the contamination rate for pork is quite high, right? As high as 30%, talking about Dystopia, E. coli, and that kind of thing, right? So using, AI and blockchain to trace the origin and each step along the way in the supply chain, and can greatly reduce the contamination rate and trace it as well, right? So it actually, save people's lives, right? So this kind of thing is it touches you, right? It impacts people's lives, and you feel great responsibility and also, accomplishment, right? Doing something like that. So yeah, it's been pretty wild. It's pretty interesting. Um, how it led me to where I am today. I think throughout my career, I have always been working with customers and started in consulting, right? Almost every time the customer will ask, what do you think of this, right? How do you think about this technology, right? I just have this additional requirement, how do we integrate, this application? We call it third party, right? Because if you're working with one vendor, right, everybody else is the third party, right? So this another technology, right? How do we, easily integrate with your solution and that solution, right? So, because you work for one vendor and your answer can only be one, right? I'm not allowed to comment on that. And I'm not, I'm not like specialized in that technology, right? So almost every single project, almost every time, right? And with AI came along, I just feel there's a huge opportunity presented to us, and to really do something that's vendor agnostic, and it really no restriction in terms of which country you work with, which technology you work with. It doesn't matter who developed this technology, as long as this technology is the best for this particular customer use case, for this particular scenario, right? And that's what I wanted to do. But all throughout my career, right, all the experiences working with IBM and working with various customers, everything I feel prepared me for where I am running the ApogemAI, right? So really we wanted to be able to work with all customers, to be able to work with all technologies, as long as this is the best technology for the customer scenario. So yeah, it's been wild so far, and
Where do you think Uppergem AI? What's your kind of vision for the next 3 years? Because I find that this space is exciting, but also quite fatiguing, because there's a new announcement every week. The AI technology, it's not. I find it so integrated into philosophy and humanity and people's very relevance and purpose. You're asking big questions all the time, and I find that quite difficult to just say, look, this is a piece of technology. Let's talk about the roadmap. Let's talk about updates and versions, implementations. It feels so much more raw and important. So like, how do you traverse and manage that? And where do you think, what are the big trends you're seeing over the next 3 years? Or even shorter than that, 6 months?
I think I mean I agree with you. This the technology changing really really fast, and it's almost it's just almost fatiguing to trying to catch up with all the excitement with the large language models and the release every 2 weeks, right? So we don't really chase that much. I think, in my opinion, technology is here, is great. Companies are trying to improve and outrun each other, and that's good for us. It's good for everybody, right? But for me, I think technology is not here, at least in its application, is not here to just impress people, right? I think it only makes sense when technology can be used to do good things for people, for businesses, right? And that's what we are focusing on. So in terms of the direction we're going, I think we start with one use cases, but what we're interested are specific use cases can actually make a real impact in people, such as the elder care, and we do many of those. But from business point of view, we are packaging services, and we are replicating something that is useful for one customers, and we're replicating it everywhere. So that in terms of sustainable business, I think our model is proven so far to be sustainable and to be profitable, so we can develop more of the service packaging to benefit more companies and more businesses and more people. In terms of technology advancement in the next 3, 5, 10 years, I think is hard to say where we're gonna be in the next 5 years. But where what we can see is that in certain industries, it's going to have a bigger impact than others, right? So at this point, according to the latest survey by Ernst Young, right, still more than one third, more than 30% of all use cases, in the enterprise arena, is still around AI, virtual assistant, chatbot, that kind of use cases. I think the opportunities are huge, right? Although we're hearing so and so is doing AI project here and there, but still, if you look at the stats, 30% are still at the chatbot level, virtual assistant level, right? There's so much more that can be done. That being said, I think across industries, I see this the rate of advancement like definitely different. I see healthcare, financial services, and retail are probably the three industries are experiencing this profound transformation driven by AI. And we all probably aware that in healthcare, and I also in the life science as well, medical imaging is huge, right? AI powered, diagnostics, for example, detecting tumors, and that's already live technology. Just not in every hospital, but it's very much live, right? X-rays, MRIs, you name it, right? Drug discovery is a big thing, right? So we already have the first AI designed, purely 100% AI designed drug in clinical trial. It's a Japanese company, right? It's very much real, and a lot of large drug companies are doing that already, right? Personalized medicine is another very big thing as well. So healthcare and life science is doing a lot of AI stuff, and one of the latest report produced by McKinsey is that among all the AI startups in healthcare, 40% of them are focusing on medical imaging. So I think in 3 years, maybe even less, right, it will be very common for for AI to do at least the first pass in all the hospitals. It's just because there's so much interest, investment, and startups, and people are keen to get this going because the base technology is there, right? Like image recognition. And so maybe that's one of the reasons many of the startup fundings are concentrated in this area. So that's healthcare, and is going to, look very different in 3 years. And financial services, I mentioned, is another one. But this one, I think people are used to it, and a lot is happening behind the scenes, right? Like fraud detection. Over 75% of banks, they are using AI doing fraud detection. We don't notice it, but we all know AI is behind the scenes, right? Your credit card got frozen because somebody is trying to, spend like $5 in the remote part of the world that you've never been to, right? So we all experience that. We all know it's behind the scenes. 75% of the banks, it's a big number. And also trading, I mentioned trading earlier. So a lot of startups are trying or are building these platforms using AI algorithm to do the trading. So I think that's going to change how the investment landscape as well.
You and I have both shared time at IBM. We've seen these enterprise technologies evolve from the old Watson machine learning, to now being rebranded as AI. You have such humble beginnings, and you're I had a Commodore 64 when I was 5 years old, and I was kind of completely excited by that early computing experience. I think you probably shared a similar journey, and it took you on this path of innovation, working in some of the biggest technology companies on the planet, fixing real problems. You have I can empathize hugely with your family values and your values and morals around society and using AI to uplift the population. But there are privacy concerns and concerns around disruption of existing industries. And if everybody can live to 120, but AI is doing all the work, where is the purpose? How do we find a purposeful 120 years of living? But the way you articulate the next 3 years, where we're seeing the application of AI across healthcare, pharmaceuticals, finance, where we can really see benefits that's going to benefit people, is so exciting. But I want to ask you the question, do you believe, Vicki, that AI will take us to a utopia or dystopia?
Definitely utopia. I mentioned several times, I'm a huge fan of technology. The advancement, I think, is something we have never seen before, at least for a long time. I think it's is going to impact us, everyone, humanity, in a very, very big way. I myself is really positive about the future with AI. I rather have it with AI than without. I think of course, it will depend on a lot of things that we do today, right? In terms of, alignment, right? Are we going to ensure that, the AI goals match human values, for example, right? Are we going to, cooperate between countries and societies to do something to prevent AI from, concentrating power to really have that super intelligence that, do their own thing, right? Are we as humans to be able to adapt to, to be able to evolve alongside the machines, right? Biologically, socially, ethically, you name it, right? So a lot of depends on these things, but I'm a huge believer of humanity. I think as long as we're not nasty to each other, that we talk to each other among countries, and and among the big powers, and to be able to communicate, to be able to work together, not against each other, and I think we're gonna be fine, and utopia it is.